We are the news.
But why, some say, the moon? Why choose this as our goal? And they may well ask, why climb the highest mountain? Why, 35 years ago, fly the Atlantic? Why does Rice play Texas? We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win, and the others too. We shall send to the moon 240,000 miles away from the control station in Houston, a giant rocket more than 300 feet tall, the length of this football field, made of new metal alloys, some of which have not yet been invented, capable of standing heat and stresses several times more than have ever been experienced, fitted together with a precision better than the finest watch, carrying all the equipment needed for propulsion, guidance, control, communications, food, and survival on an untried mission to an unknown celestial body, and then return it safely to Earth, re-entering the atmosphere at speeds of over 25,000 miles per hour, causing heat about half that on the temperature of the sun, almost as hot as it is here today, and do all this, and do all this, and do it right, and do it first before this decade is out, then we must be bold.
Okay, Zoe, favorite.
What is your favorite thing about space?
Going there. Going there.
Why has nobody been to the moon in such a long time?
That's not an 8-year-old's question. That's my question. I want to know, but I think I know.
He knows.
Because we didn't go there, and that's the way it happened. And if it didn't happen, it's nice to know why it didn't happen, so in the future, if we want to keep doing something, we need to know why something stopped in the past that we wanted to keep it going.
So, hello, Ryan. It's Rohan. It's Sunday. I got your fucking name wrong. It's a Sunday.
No worries.
Yeah, we're just chilling out, and I think moon landings is a super conversation to have. And so, before I do all the like, subscribe, and all the shout outs and stuff, you just listened to Buzz Aldrin saying because we didn't go there. I mean, he said that. So, this is your probably one and only opportunity to get psych in, or
definitely,
analyst have a look at the language that he used. What do you make of that? Before we even get into some of the more technical aspects of what they did, what they claimed they had to have done to get to the moon and get back, and the evidence that suggests that they didn't do it.
I even wanted to be sort of charitable to him. It's an interesting Freudian slip to say that, you know, why we didn't go there. Because, I mean, I think, like, yeah, if I wanted to be charitable, the point he's trying to make is that he's annoyed that they stopped and he wanted to know why they stopped. But yeah, that particular little slip, it's like, you know, because we didn't go.
Then he tries to pull that back.
Yeah. Then
recover.
Yeah, because this is, yeah, the body language is very interesting there. The fact that he slips up and then there's this clear pause and as I said, this isn't a guy who's, despite being old, he's clearly still very mentally there, very cogent. Mm-hmm. And you can see the gears whirring where he's like, hang on, how do I thread this into something?
How do I take back what
and he threads it into the, I'd really like to know why we stopped if we want to continue doing this. So he threads it into something that's innocent and innocuous, but that initial slip is very telling.
He's made numerous slips like that. as have all 12 astronauts that claim to have walked on the moon, and there's only 12 of them who have walked on the moon. Only 3 of them would swear on the Bible. And they said, and the guy, Bart, was called Bart Seibel, he said, I'll give £5,000 to a charity of your choice. All you have to do is swear on the Bible you walked on the moon. And only 3 of them didn't. And one of them punched him, and that would have been Buzz Aldrin. Yeah, Buzz Aldrin gave him a good old whack, to be fair. But it's not the sort of behavior you would expect from people that have actually done the most momentous thing that I can think of, other than walking on Mars or floating around in Jupiter, would be walking on the moon. Okay, so that's today's conversation. It's Darren's third conversation I really, really wanted to have, along with UFOs and pyramids. I want to have a conversation about the moon landings, because I am pretty confident that we didn't do it, or at a bare minimum, the footage was faked. Almost certainly the footage was faked. And I'm going to try and convince Rohan that was the case today. So anyway, welcome to the conversation. Like, subscribe, don't like, leave a comment, try and start some conversation. It's an interesting topic. And a few shout outs as well. Big shout out to Steve. Big shout out to Phil, who have joined the We Are the News team. And also, really important, nothing to do with moon landings. Big shout out to Plymouth Stand in the Park, who protested and marched through the city centre, the shopping centre of Plymouth. They put up a stand. They broadcasted some truths to the public. And I thought that was more effective than, a million people marching through London that nobody ever sees. So big stand out to Stand in the Park. Right, back to the conversation, Rohan. Moon landings. So I've got one of Darren's PowerPoints with a load of pictures on. We're going to have a look at some context in terms of technology. We're going to have a look at the evidence presented to us for the moon landings. Got some videos and stuff. So you can see from my face, I am super psyched about this.
The point you just made, just to slip in quickly, I didn't expect it to tie in with the research I'm doing right now, but there's a point in the Righteous Mind book about how even people who aren't particularly sanctimonious won't sell their soul, even if they're prompted in a test. Even if they're told that, so this idea that they wouldn't swear on the Bible is quite relevant. Because even people who are, even people who are quite atheistic still have enough of a concept of sanctity that they will not sell their soul. And the funny thing is, the percentage in the test, it was roughly 30% of the people in the test would sell their soul. Yeah. And so it correlates quite interesting to the amount of, people who would swear on the Bible there.
A quarter.
That's an interesting.
There you go, mate.
Interesting
these like ratios, like you've just mentioned, it's almost a bit like a Pareto ratio, an 80-20 split. It's common through all sets of data. That Pareto bell curve shows up. And the reason why it's even more pertinent that they wouldn't 9 of the 12 astronauts who claim to have walked on the moon wouldn't swear on the Bible is because they are American and they're a deeply Christian country. And it's highly likely that all of those astronauts, especially back in the 60s and 70s, would have been deeply religious in terms of their belief in God and the Bible and all the rest of it. And you're right. If
they would have appearances to keep up, like their family or their community.
Yeah. If I was asked to swear on the Bible to do something that I didn't do, I wouldn't do it. And I'm not a religious man, So, and I wouldn't. So yeah, it's a really interesting point. And the fact that Buzz Aldrin punched the guy asking, Bart Seibel, whatever it was called, is also
very famous video.
Yeah, it's quite significant, and I haven't included that video. Right, so let's go to share screen, and I'm going to bring up my PowerPoint now, and that one's showing.
I think this is definitely going to be a subject that I'm going to be much more malleable on. I think.
Yeah. Let's hope. There we go. It's just coming up. Let's hope Rohan is a little bit more open-minded than he was with the pyramids. I didn't class that as a success. The pyramid in terms of trying to convince you. So. Right. Oh, we are the news. This is our new branding, and we are on all these channels. So please go and find us on there. Information in the link below. Yeah, good stuff. Right. Let's get our.
I just threw that top hat picture up on show. I think it's actually quite good as a little logo. That top hat one. This is growing on me. That
great.
one.
It works. Right. So my first slide is of a news truck. Now. The speech that Kennedy just gave, that was 1962. They actually the first launch to the moon was 7 years later in 69, before the end of the decade as promised. But back then, this was a type of car that was driving around. You know, like, I don't know what that sort of car is. That's British. So it's like a Hillman or something. But if you wanted to send one signal from one side of a city to the other, or to just to the TVs in that city, or from one city to another city, or let's just say from Scotland down to Plymouth, if you wanted to send that signal back in the 60s, you would use a television truck. And in fact, in the background, Thames Television no longer exists, you can see that they got a crane. Yeah, and I think that crane was used to improve the reach of the signal. Yeah, where they were using radio waves back then primarily to transmit.
For anyone that's seen Mars Attacks, it's like these types of the trucks are very prevalent because when they land, you have loads of these trucks roll up. So yeah, it's something that I guess a lot of, if there's any younger people in the audience, they wouldn't know about it.
They wouldn't know that. They just got their mobile.
Yeah, but these things were very common.
And like you said, multiple trucks would turn up for all the different news organizations.
Well, Anchorman, they show that, don't they?
Watch Anchorman, exactly.
Yeah, Anchorman's a fantastic film.
And each television network would have multiple trucks just to do a story. Okay, so I just sort of put that in there as some sort of context of the communication technology, how shit the cars were, and how the news and information was disseminated to the TVs and the radios back in the day, 50, 60 years ago. Okay, so television trucks, keep that in mind. Okay, and I keep losing your face. There you go. Computer technology of the 60s. So in the top right-hand corner is the computer system that NASA used for Apollo 11. Okay, and then here's like one of the first on the right hand side. The big picture is one of the first desktop computers. Okay, that's called a VT100. I don't know who made it. It's even got digital on there. Yeah, but it wasn't. It was fucking analog. They were lying. And then today that's an iPhone 13. So the performance of the iPhone 13 is about 16 billion operations per second. Yeah, I would suspect that this system here was probably doing a few thousand operations per second. Yeah. So that's the difference in computing power. The iPhone 13 has more computing power than all the computers on the planet back in 1969 combined, by far.
Even when I went to school, there was the meme that the sort of Casio calculators that you had more computing power than the Apollo module.
Yeah. Because even a calculator, especially a modern calculator.
Yeah, well, they can probably do more than a few thousand calculations a second. So a modern calculator now is probably better than the NASA computers. At the ground zero.
Fucking mechanical watch. Can you see it there? Good watch. Well, mechanical watch has probably got more computer power than NASA did. Yeah, but they relied on a load of people doing hand calculations. And I don't doubt that there are people smart enough to do it. No doubt about it. Yeah, mathematicians. People were probably a lot smarter back in the 60s at an academic level than we are now, potentially. Yeah.
Or at least they know a lot more of the kind of the nuts and bolts of stuff, because this is the thing. A lot of computing technology allows you to bypass the kind of more basic stuff and just get right to the end. And, those people had to have all of that base knowledge.
So next point of context was our communication technology was really poor. We needed giant trucks to send signals from one city to another, and a calculator quite literally has greater computer power than the computers that we use. Not more greater computer power than the people, but the computers. Okay, and these computers still sort of operated on binary information that was fed in by tapes. Yeah. So these were still tape driven, just like we used to have the Spectrum 128, which I fucking loved. You put a tape in to load up a program or a computer game. It was very similar. It was basically the same technology that they were using in NASA. Okay. So anyway, so that's the computer technology. Ryan, you're muted for some reason.
Yeah, I'm just like, I don't want to hear people scratching around.
Okay, good. Yeah. Right, next one. Okay. And then finally, the other bit of technology that I just wanted to provide some context with, that's that picture there. This is interesting because I've forgotten about this until I looked the picture up today. That's a Hasselblad 500 camera, which regards the best camera available at the time. It was made by a Swedish firm. It's actually regarded as probably the greatest camera ever made, which is why NASA chose it. Yeah, it's a really, really shit hot camera, especially for the time, and it used Kodak film. Okay, so a couple of things about this particular camera. This very one. This is the only camera that they brought back from the moon. The only one. They left the others behind. They just took the film.
Right. So it delivers like Polaroids, like the out kind of thing. It's like a Polaroid camera. Right?
No. It has Kodak film inside.
Oh wait, no. Yeah, never mind.
The negatives, and then they get developed. Yeah. But that's the only camera that was brought back from the moon. And the argument that was given, or the reason that was given, was purely because for weight. Yeah, they needed to reduce the amount of weight for liftoff, and so they left a load of stuff and junk and rubbish on the lunar surface. Okay, and one more thing about this particular camera. Don't forget, we've got iPhone 13s now, yeah, which has 4 cameras on it. You can do all sorts of stuff. The other thing about this particular camera is it had no form of shielding, no LED, no nothing. Okay, it relied on a Kodak film that, when exposed to radiation, would be destroyed. Okay?
I mean, that's probably just a steel case, right? I mean,
that's just like a steel case. There's no form of no radiation shielding in this camera. Okay, and that camera was mounted on the chest of each of the 12 astronauts that landed on the lunar surface. So, just providing some sort of context before we go on to the rocket, yeah? So the rocket that they used was this. This is the Saturn V5 rocket. 3 stages. Each of those stages had a propellant. The mass of that rocket was about 3,000 tons, okay? So, and then next to it, we've got the lunar module. I've just stuck all this stuff in because, in case some sort of geeky person wants to have a look at it. This is the lunar lander. There's also a control module which they use to orbit the moon. And I'll put a little astronaut in there for scale. So there were 3 men that fitted into the capsule, the Apollo spacecraft at the top. So my first question to you, so it's not just me talking. What do you think? Oh, something's flashing up there. Let's get rid of that shit. What do you think the payload was for the largest rocket ever constructed? Still is the largest rocket. What do you think the payload was in mass? Kilograms or tons or whatever?
I have no idea how to even estimate. I mean, what do you say the rocket was? Like 5 billion?
3,000 tons.
So yeah, it's got to be most of the spacecraft. It's got to be like 3,000 tons or something of propellant.
Yeah, basically.
Or more.
So what was the payload? And payload, I'm just talking about the spacecraft and its occupants, just a bit at the top.
Oh, so basically a quarter of the rocket weight is the actual nuts and bolts and the actual instruments, right? You know, it's only that little bit at the end. It's only sort of like less than 1,000 tons.
You reckon it is far less than 1,000 tons? Far less. Yeah.
Well, the module itself, I mean, it's probably only like a couple 100 tons, if even that.
I looked this up as I walked around the home this morning on my way up to stand in the park to say hello and congratulate them yesterday. And I Googled it because I thought, I don't know what the payload was. Yeah, the maximum payload for the Saturn V5 rocket was probably about between 30 and 50 tons. So the actual payload is 30 tons.
Oh, I see. So that's just all of the weight that's not the propellant. That's just the sheer weight of the rocket. The actual payload is just minuscule in terms of proportion.
So the lunar module, this device here, this vehicle here, the command module, which is another part of the Apollo spacecraft, which orbited the moon while they were on the surface, and the people and the occupants and a bit of propellant that they carry to get off the moon and stuff, and to maneuver in space, 30 tons. Yeah. So it was 1% of the entire rocket. And just as an interesting point about space technology, that's why space technology is so crap and so inefficient, because 99% of this rocket was just fuel.
Yeah. So what's that in a good analogous context? Is that like a bus? I mean, because like a big truck is like 8 or 9 tons, isn't it? So like a small bus would be like 30 tons? Maybe like a single story smaller bus.
Maybe a couple of Thames TV.
With a couple of those trucks. Yeah,
maybe a couple of news trucks.
So it's still, it's just so because I have trouble just visualizing these types of things, you know. So it's nice to have it as a quantifiable unit in my mind, you know.
Yeah, so it's 30. So it's free. The lunar module, the actual spacecraft was 3,000 kilograms. Yeah, 3,000 kilograms. And I have actually seen the lunar module. I upset a father with his son because I went and looked at this object, this vehicle, in the Natural History Museum or the Science Museum.
I'm pretty sure I saw it when I was younger because they had an exhibition in the Science Museum with all of the Apollo stuff.
You can go on YouTube and you can have people who have really, really examined this, and we're going to have a look at close up in a bit of this vehicle. And they reckon that to fit 3 astronauts into the spacecraft and everything, and then the lunar module, was not possible. Yeah. And having looked at the vehicle myself, I would question it as a living space. But anyway, so that's what they went up with. They went up in this, and they landed in this. Okay. And that astronaut is roughly to scale. Okay. All right, moving on. Yeah, this is so exciting. Okay, I'll bring all this up in one go. So basically, their feat was in 62. JFK said we're going to the moon. 69, after the Russians had beat them to every single achievement in space, from first object or satellite to first man, woman, dog, first monkey. First like high altitude orbit, when they've gone much further than the Kármán line, which is only 100 kilometers up. The Americans got absolutely thrashed. The American rocket technology was shit, at the time compared to what the Russians were achieving.
Operation Paperclip didn't do as much as they thought it would.
No, it's true. Yeah, but the Russians got the better Nazi scientists.
Oh yeah, they got the better ones. Okay,
they got the better ones. They did a better deal at the time when they were splitting them up. It seems the British did really badly. We've just been wiped off the map for everything. Yeah. So the first mission, which was Armstrong, Alien Armstrong, Michael Collins and Edwin Buzz Aldrin, who we saw at the beginning of this chat. Collins didn't land on the surface, but Armstrong and Aldrin did. Okay, so first mission, they got there, landed, took pictures, sent them back to fucking Earth, then took off from the moon and landed back on Earth First time. no problems. First time they did it. Yeah, they had a few orbits beforehand. The moon, 250,000 miles away, and we have never been back to the moon again since the 5 missions. Well, there was 6 missions, but Apollo 13, just coincidence that it was Apollo 13. They had a problem with Apollo 13. Tom Hanks made a special film about it. And the reason in the conspiracy world, the reason why Apollo 13 failed and we nearly lost the astronauts was because the American population, after watching the first 2 missions on TV, started complaining that they were putting moon landing footage on TV instead of Dr. Ed or whatever. What was the talking horse called?
Yeah, there was Dr. Ed, yeah.
Whatever, the talking horse. Yeah, that was interrupting their normal programming, and they were complaining. So they needed a disaster to reignite interest in the lunar missions. Okay? And as Armstrong famously said, 1 small step for man, 1 giant leap for mankind. Okay. Now, one more before we get into the we're going to get into the evidence. So because it's me talking a lot, right? It's because I'm so fucking excited.
Well, I said you're basically delivering a very good lecture here. You know, I'm absorbing the information.
It must be nostalgic, mate. It must be taking you back a few years to your chemistry.
Well, no, it was only last year I was listening to. I said this is a lot more interesting than something about bloody socialists. So I'd rather listen about the moon landings than Comte or Weber. So this is good.
Okay, so we're going to start looking at evidence now. The actual evidence presented to us by NASA and by the American establishment to demonstrate that they had been to the moon. Okay, and I personally, and I've got no bones about it, find the evidence incredibly flimsy. And the first thing that I notice as a chemist is that there's a problem with the flame coming out of the Saturn V rocket. It's yellow. It also left a massive smoke trail behind it. Smoke, not necessarily steam. It looked like smoke.
Yeah, because what's the propellant supposed to be? Because even my rudimentary chemistry knowledge says that's more of a kind of dirtier hydrocarbon type burn, right? That's not something you would expect from the more refined fuel that they use.
No, you normally see sort of bluish, hard to see flames. Normally, you get a lot of steam, which people might confuse with smoke. Okay. But the Saturn V produced a massive yellow flame and lots of smoke. So here's one of the little chemistry lessons that I taught you. And if you've forgotten, I'm not going to be very happy. If you have a Bunsen burner and you reduce the amount of oxygen, you get a yellow flame. Why?
Because it's not burning as efficiently.
Okay, good. Yeah. So you have it does sound like I'm teaching.
It's an incorrect mix, right? It's not the optimal mix of oxygen to fuel.
Yeah, if you wanted a blue flame on a Bunsen burner, you need to have maximum amount of oxygen in there in order to have complete combustion. If you reduce the amount of oxygen, you have incomplete combustion, which is inefficient. Yeah, and then that produces smoke and a yellow flame. Complete combustion is blue flame.
The smoke is the incomplete hydrocarbons that aren't being consumed properly, bleeding off as carbon and gases, right?
And you get things like carbon monoxide and monoxide, which is often a product of incomplete combustion. And like you said, you're getting a lot of soot that hasn't been combusted. Yeah.
Well, it's your favorite thing in chemistry, isn't it? It's the whole equalizing the equation. So it's like, you need this to get the proper product. And if you're not doing it properly, you're getting all these unintended byproducts.
You need to have a right. So my first point when I looked at this, or when I've studied this, and it's not just me who's brought this up, but it looks like, why would they want incomplete combustion? Why would they want a yellow flame? Because it provides great optics for the people watching. Okay, so I'm just guessing. I don't know this. You know,
well, I'd make the one excuse because it's always my favorite one. Is just like maybe someone fucked up. I like to consider incompetence first. So yeah, it could but then again, I mean, if you're making enough of a mistake that you've screwed up your fuel ratios on the stage one of your rocket, it's like that brings to question a lot of competence issues of these engineers. Like, because surely appropriate fuel ratios shouldn't be a difficult thing to deal with, especially when you're talking about something that's so expensive.
Yeah, it's an easy science. Now, it might be that my eyes are deceiving me, or that modern rockets actually produce a similar flame, or it could just be that the technology at the time meant that this is the type of flame produced, etc. But I don't buy that. Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that the fuels that we use now and the fuels we used back then are, identical. Rocket fuel is rocket fuel.
Well, in the rocket, don't they literally just use like hydrogen and oxygen and combine them? Like it's literally just really basic. Yeah, well, it's a
hydrocarbon.
Yeah,
it has to be a hydrocarbon. Yeah, it's fuel.
I thought they just like combined hydrogen and oxygen to like just burn it straight like that or something.
Yeah, well, they do. Don't they? They carry an oxidizer, so they'll carry a compound.
But they're definitely not solid fuel rockets. Big. It's like the big difference.
They do use one of those stages might have been a solid fuel. Might have been.
Well, I know the breaching the charges to separate and stuff is obviously like, and it's some sort of solid explodable material that separates the stages.
Yeah. And another interesting thing was that when I went and looked for this picture this morning, I found that there wasn't actually a huge, when I burned the images and put Saturn V rocket, there wasn't a massive amount of images coming up, either of the rocket, schematics and stuff, wasn't massive, not what I expected, or images of the launch. There wasn't many, which was surprising, And
because it's not like people haven't been cataloging important events. I mean, one of my favorite channels on YouTube is like British Pathé thing, where you have like black and white footage from like the 1800s and stuff. Like, so yeah, you'd think events of this magnitude you would have a lot of footage.
Yeah, actually there isn't. They just regurgitate and reuse the same footage over and over again.
And it's definitely not a question of them not uploading the space stuff to the internet. It's a question of it not being there and then reusing stuff, right?
Not being available or being destroyed. So anyway, so that's the rocket. So then they get into space, right? So here we are. Yeah, with the blue line. Yeah, so they launch. They probably did. I think they might have done multiple orbits. I don't know. I'm assuming they probably did a couple of orbits. And then they used the gravitational effect of Earth, a slingshot effect, to fly them, slingshot them up to the moon. And then they flew around on the moon, probably did some orbits. The lunar module then disengaged from the spacecraft with two astronauts in it, Armstrong and Aldrin. Yeah, they landed at their landing site, whilst Collins in the command module continued to orbit the moon about 8,000 miles an hour. Yeah, so he was going around the moon at about 8,000 miles an hour. Orbit round the Earth is about 17,000 miles an hour, a bit more you need to maintain a stable orbit. And then when they departed, the lunar module lifted off from the moon and then reconnected. Don't forget, this is 1969. Reconnected with the command module, and then they slingshotted using the moon's gravity back to Earth, and then they landed down somewhere in the Pacific. Okay, and they did that first time. There was no practice missions that went wrong, or it wasn't like, we've had 3 failures and we've lost nine astronauts, but the 4th one was successful, which is sort of what you probably would expect. Obviously, there were a lot of people who did die during the build-up to building the rockets and the lunar modules and all the rest of it prior to them getting into space. So that was the feat, and this distance is 250,000 miles.
Yeah, well, 250 miles.
Yeah.
What did they say? Like, they obviously the people at this time were capable of making sort of paper simulations on the physics involved here. But yeah, we're talking long before any sort of real-time computational simulation capability.
Yeah.
You know, so you'd be dealing only with sort of pen and paper calculation. It's like you said before, not to discredit these people who are incredibly smart, but I imagine the margin of error for an operation like this isn't, you know, each one of these various stages, like when it separates and when it reconnects, all of these things. I mean, yeah, like milliseconds count in these types of calculations, surely.
Yeah,
because especially if you're re-engaging with something that's in orbit, that's an incredibly precise operation. I mean, I know you do have maneuvering thrusters to lessen it to some extent, but your margin of error is incredibly small.
In fact, really, what they weren't relying on, you know, computer aided like navigation technology. Yeah, they didn't have a robot, a computer where they could say, "Oh, we're slightly off course. Computer, can you realign us and get us back on the right trajectory?" They didn't have that. It would have all been manual. It would have all been analog. It would have all been done by wire technology, or even less, like really type mechanical type technology. And like you said, if they fly off the Earth and they get to, I don't know, you know, one of these points here, what we've got here, like separation from EDS. Yeah, if that suddenly put them off by 1/10 of a degree, just 1/10 of a degree, yeah, they're fucking flying off into space.
Yeah, because if you're talking a distance of like 250,000 or 250,000 miles, it's like, you know, that's, yeah, it's like a couple degrees once you travel like a 1,000 miles is going to lead you way off course. So yeah, this is what I mean. Like I don't doubt the intelligence of the people involved in this, but all the computing power of these modules and stuff would be purely for the sake of instruments and things, right? So they can get accurate readings, but all of the actual like doing the calculation stuff would have to be done on the fly. And, you know, I'm sure these astronauts, again, were incredibly intelligent, but we're dealing with, I don't think people just need to appreciate the margin of error level here, because in a lot of engineering, you get quite wide margin of error. You know, you've got like in some cases, in some civil engineering, they put in like double tolerances. Like you just can't do that here. It's like there is. And yeah, it is miraculous that they would achieve this first time. It would make it almost way more believable if they failed a load of missions, because the calculations involved here are incredible, and to pull it all off perfectly, because all it takes is for one of the charges on one of the separation stages to be out of sync by the smallest fraction of time, and you're talking about a course deviation. So it's I'm sure they had the smarts to do a lot of the working out. It's just the possibility of just achieving this is already so in doubt, and to do it with that level of technology is, as I said, because this is the thing, like with our pyramid discussion, it's just like the stuff's incredible, but I can at least see some way how they could have achieved it with the level of technology they had. There's at least a possibility. Whereas with a lot of this, it's like we're talking smaller margins of possibility here, like with like doing all this. And again, it's like I hate to shit on NASA, and I also hate to shit on the idea of going to space, because like the discussion we had before about Star Trek and stuff, the idea of exploring space and all this stuff is something that's very dear to me. But I mean, the more you question this and look at this, and it does seem like.
And we haven't even got to any of the photographic evidence yet.
But this alone, it is quite amazing, and the fact that there's not a lot more sort of hard chronicling of this that has been done. I mean, I just don't really know what to say other than thinking of achieving that in reality scares me. Yeah,
well, I mean, we don't do it now, do we? And the other thing is the telemetry, the data that they recorded for the journey, the numeric information.
Yeah, that's the thing, is there like a black box for this?
All right. So they had all this. They were allegedly recording all of the telemetry on the ground, in Houston. And guess what they did with all that telemetry data? Fucking burnt it, didn't they? They destroyed it. So that doesn't exist anymore to go back over. Yeah, they destroyed that technology.
See, I hate that, because it's just like, on the one hand, I want to be skeptical of things, but if people destroy information, that alone like leads so much more information to the other side. 'Cause I'm just like, why wouldn't you preserve that? I mean, it's like, surely the telemetry data of mankind's first trip to the moon is something that should be in a bloody museum, to quote old Indy. Like why isn't that pride of place in all the science museums everywhere, like a copy of the telemetry data?
Or they recorded over it.
What reason would you have to delete it?
Did they record over it? Did they record over it? I think they might have recorded over it. I don't know. And then they go, we didn't have, we needed the tape, because it was all on tape.
Well, if it's literally like a colossal fuck up of like one of their interns where they accidentally taped over it, I mean, sometimes that shit happens, but yeah, like, I would like to think they would have prioritized recording this more.
Yeah, they destroyed pretty much all the technology. Yeah, and that's their argument for not going back. Their argument for not going back to the moon is that they destroyed the technology, and we don't have the technology anymore. It's like, wait a sec, you did it in the fucking 60s, mate, in the 70s, where you could barely send a signal from one city to another so that people could watch the TV. But you went to the moon, and now you're saying you can't do it in 2021. Come on.
And it's just me being the philosophy psych man, it just doesn't make any sense as well, because like with all the voyages that man did, like Magellan and Columbus and all this stuff, there's always some guy on board that makes really fucking good logs, right? There's always that one guy that like chronicles the journey and make sure that this is preserved throughout history, right? And to think that not a single person involved in this assumed that role of making sure that this was preserved for historical posterity, like, seems kind of insane to me. Like, because if I was involved in this, I would personally keep a copy of all of this, and I would make a nice big book afterwards, like, listing all the data and how amazing it was. So yeah, it's bizarre that they would destroy any of it.
Yeah, you'd have a caretaker, wouldn't you? You'd have a caretaker and a museum dedicated, and they have got a museum to it.
You'd have a journalist, one that keeps a journal. This is the whole point. Like, this is why journalists are so important in society, is all of these events that occur, they're the record for the rest of time, like making sure everyone can get the information. So
anyway, we're going to move on to the next bit. This was their achievement. So this is what they did, okay, according to the official record and narrative. Okay. Oh, I keep doing that. I wish I wouldn't. Okay, so they landed on 6 different sites we can see on the moon. It's all on one side of the moon, and it's the side that we can see. They didn't land on the dark side of the moon. So there's 6 sites. Yeah, we can see that each of these sites, for whatever reason, they were chosen. This is Apollo 11 here. No. 14, that is. Sorry, Apollo 11's down here. So the first site was here. So that's Sea of Tranquility. And these sites are all far away from each other. Yeah, you can imagine there's hundreds of miles between each of these landing sites. So they get all the way out there. They land on the moon. I do not know which mission this lander is from. I'm assuming this isn't Apollo 11, simply because there's a radar dish and stuff here, and it's all in color. Okay, so
or this could even be one that's kind of like where they do a stage thing just to show it off, because that's a problem when you look up a lot of the moon landing photos, is that a lot of people do just they fabricate stuff because you say a lot of the original stuff doesn't exist, right? So then they'll make modern fabrications so that they can put them on their articles and shit.
Mate, I found a picture on this morning, and it was there. It was supposed to be a NASA picture of the moon, blah, blah, blah. And when I examined it, there's absolutely no doubt about it that what the astronaut was superimposed. So I was like that. It wasn't the NASA site that I got from. So I was like that. Has somebody deliberately just faked this picture and made it, this is NASA? Or was that one of the original pictures that were put out? And I'm the first person to notice it. I haven't included it in this little presentation. Anyway, so this is the Lunar lander. And what do you see? Well, I'm circling it with my nice pink cursor.
Yeah, the dust.
You see dust, yeah. What don't you see then? It's a big fucking rocket, mate. It's not just like a little Mickey Mouse.
Well, yeah, it seems to there would have been some counter thrust surely on the landing. I mean, that's the thing. I don't know. Like, I'm guessing it doesn't just go plump
No. They had a giant thrust. In fact, you heard Armstrong as he was coming down. He was the pilot of Apollo 11, not this particular one. And they talked about all the dust that was being blown up as they were landing. Yeah, and it was shown as well in some of the footage. And yeah, Apollo 11 and all the other landers, no crater. This is supposed to be dust. No crater. Yeah.
I mean, and even if you want to be like really super generous, I mean, like there's a slight discoloration, and there seems to be like maybe a little bit of dust that's destabilized to each side. But I mean, that's being incredibly generous. Mate, I mean, like you'd expect
it should have made a massive hole.
Because what cohedes the lunar dust together, right? Because this is the thing, I have no idea what type of material we're dealing with. Are we talking about stuff that just immediately like disperses, or are we talking about stuff that has some degree of weight and cohesion to it? I mean,
I suspect that it will be very very dry, yeah, because in space, as the pressure drops, boiling point drops.
So all the moisture's been boiled off the moon a long time ago. So
at a zero pressure, which is what should be on the lunar surface because it doesn't have an atmosphere, all the water would boil away. Yeah.
So we're talking like very fine, very dry sand is probably the expected consistency of this moon dust.
And we see that because of the footprints.
And how deep, like is there any estimation as to how deep it is on the surface? Like, because that's another thing is like, well, what if there are patches of the surface where it's only, you're relatively shallow, So because as I said, I'm just trying to play devil's advocate as potential explanations, but at face value, you would expect there to be far more evidence that thruster had done something. Because what fuel is that thruster?
Well, a good exact is look at the land. Look at this pad. We're going to come onto the crater in a minute.
Yeah, that's quite obviously depressed,
Right? Yeah, but there's no fucking crater. Yeah, I mean, this thing weighed. How much did this thing weigh? Like a couple of tons? Yeah, I think this is like a ton. I think 10,000 pounds. And so what's that? That's 5,000. So it's about 5 tons, I think. Yeah.
Just looking at this, I assume that I immediately assumed that it was something that someone had faked to show an example of what the lander looked like on the moon, and wasn't an actual lander on the moon.
So we'll come back to the crater, although we've sort of discussed it now. Right? But on appearance, you go, oh, it looks a bit tatty, looks a bit thrown together. I don't know if I'd get in that. I don't know if I'd get in this. I don't know if I'd get in this if it was going to the moon. So I'm zoomed in just on that one image. Yeah, I haven't done any more. Please, whoever's watching this, if you go on to YouTube, you can or Google Images, you can find quite a few images of this, and you can zoom in and examine them. Okay, look.
I mean, to be fair as well,
what the fucking point is this? What's it for?
But the landing module, they only get in it right at the bit when they're supposed to go down. Like the other module that orbits is a little bit bigger, right? The one that they actually spend the majority of the time in, and then they kind of slip into it.
Yeah, I mean, I think they can interchange, can't they? They can move in and out.
Because I'm assuming you've got like the capsule they're all in, and then this is like hanging underneath, and then when they get to the point where they're going to do it, they sort of like slip into it, and then it fires off. So they're not in this for the whole journey, but I mean, you're still going through space. You're still traveling from space to, from the moon's orbit to the moon's surface in something that I mean, as I said, I'm certain that this has to be a not an actual moon lander. I mean, like this can't be
an actual moon lander, and this picture is definitely one that was presented to the public as evidence of being on the moon. 100%. No argument about it. It's not some scale model they put out. Yeah, if I go back to the original picture, look, they've got the crosshairs. See this crosshair there?
All I can say is that I wouldn't want to get in that.
I did this presentation on moon landings when I was teaching at the college. I was told not to do it, so I definitely did it. And I had some Navy guys in my class who were studying like chemistry and physics with me and stuff. And when they saw this, they were like, there's no fucking way I'll get in that. No way, right? It looks like it's made out of cardboard. I can't explain what some of these material, what this is for.
even if it's not cardboard, it looks like just thin
Stop.
sheet metal, incredibly poorly riveted together,
Yeah.
like a real kind of hatchet job. It's
You
like, and look at those. I keep getting drawn to these like things that are on the corner. Like, I swear that one of those things is used as like a little prop doohickey on Han Solo's pistol in Star Wars.
Yeah.
It looks like it looks like something that the Mythbusters dudes would make. Yeah, it's like if you asked a prop studio like make me a moon lander, this looks like they would deliver you. At a distance it might look all right, but yeah, as soon as you peer close, you're like, oh yeah, there's the masking tape.
I mean, the one thing I would want from my lunar module lander, the landing vehicle, is I want it to be airtight. Yeah. Because I'm in space.
Just look at the texture of that thing on the corner, just the texture and the waviness of it. The fact that there's not a single solid line on this entire thing. It's like everything is like distorted and wavy and textured. It's like, at the very least, you would expect it to be angular and clean. Just nothing about this really makes sense.
Guess what that object doesn't have? Very much like the cameras. No
radiation protection.
They had no shielding from radiation in that object, in that vehicle, or in any of the spaceship, any of the lunar spaceship, the bit on the top. No shielding, no lead shielding. They said they used their water and food supplies to protect them from the radiation of the sun.
What could you even use in space? Because that's the thing. I mean, lead is obviously like way too heavy if we're talking about the payload. Like what type of radiation resistant material
now they could use, excuse me, they could probably use some carbon materials, but materials made out of boron.
Maybe some sort of advanced ceramic, like composite ceramics seem to be the thing these days. But then again, we're talking about cutting edge technology, not something that was already available.
Something that can either absorb the radiation or be so dense that the radiation can't penetrate.
Yeah, create a complete bubble, like a complete shielded bubble that it can't penetrate.
Well, any type of shielding that you would use, I mean, we still use lead and concrete and water. Water's good, because it can absorb the radiation. So they said they used water, but they weren't carrying much water. In fact, all the footage of the astronauts in space en route to the moon, there is none of them eating or drinking, I believe, on the way, which is a little bit odd.
Okay. The trip wasn't exactly super quick, was it? I mean, it was
3 days.
Yeah, so I mean, we're talking theoretically long enough to not really eat, but you definitely drink.
Yeah, you wouldn't. I mean, you wouldn't be out. You wouldn't send astronauts to the moon and back, which is what, a 1 week trip, including time on the surface.
You'd at least see them snacking on some sort of energy bar-y type thing. I mean,
they would need food, and they would need a lot of it. It's highly stressful. It's a super stressful. The voyage. As a voyage, that's super stressful, isn't it? Going to the moon.
Yeah, you definitely want to be able to maintain concentration. I mean, 2 days without food, and because this is the thing, you've got to do all of the complicated shit when you reach the moon, so you need to be 100% sharp along the way. So, logistically, there's a lot of good questions.
Yeah, all right. So this is what they went in, and you can just look at that, and I just go, fuck off. I'm getting that. Moving on. Yeah, we've already discussed the crater. Not only on all of them, you can see there's the crosshairs, real picture. I've zoomed in with this lady. I don't know where she come from. Okay. And if you have a look at, it's not just that there's no crater or any obvious burn mark from this high temperature rocket. It had about 10,000 pounds worth of thrust, so 5,000 kilos worth of thrust, which is what I'm basing the mass of the vehicle itself on. But the actual landing pads, and we saw one that was buried right in the sand on that. This is a different landing to the one we just looked at. No dust has settled on the landing pads in any of them. Yeah, so they kicked up dust. We know that happened when they come down to the land, as you would expect. You'd expect that dust to settle on the landing pads. None there. It's the same for all of them. Which is weird, right? Weird.
Yeah, so I get what you're saying. Like, when the cloud comes back down, there'd be some on the top of these. Yeah, this like, why is that?
So NASA say because there is no atmosphere, that's why. And that's what they say. They don't go into any more maths or detail. They just say that.
Yeah, again, even to play devil's advocate and say like, well, with the burn marks, it's like if the combustion was efficient enough, it wouldn't be depositing the carbon, right? And maybe the material that the moon dust is made from is heat absorbent enough that it doesn't make that much of a difference. Yeah, it doesn't visually change that much when you heat it. And even then you can see there is, there does appear to be like maybe a slight disturbance if you want to be generous, but the stuff not being on top of the pads, that is quite.
Why is there still like it's undisturbed?
Yeah,
well, not only that, and some of them there are footprints underneath. They're hanging on top of footprints.
I'm just trying to provide devil's advocate. As far as I look at that, and it does definitely seem dodgy. It's like, to me, all of these photos just seem as like mock-up examples of what this stuff would have looked like.
Yeah, we can see the crosshairs. These photos were provided and presented to the public as genuine pictures of this vehicle and people on the moon. And some of these landers had footprints underneath them. In fact, even this picture, I think, if we had a good look, looks like they've got footprints underneath. So the astronauts climb underneath the rocket when they were on the surface? No room. They're in these giant suits. Doesn't make any sense, does it? So anyway, we've done that. So to get to the moon, they've landed on the moon. Okay, so this is one of the astronauts, again, real picture, or it's been provided as a real picture, and we can see evidence of one of the crosshairs here, crosshair there, look. And apparently, the sun's on the other side of this picture. I'll bring both of them up. The sun's on the other side of this picture on the left of one of the astronauts climbing down the ladder, and actually the point that's been highlighted is that it looks like there is an artificial light source which is lighting up the astronaut as he climbs down, as highlighted here. And if we have a look at this other picture, which is one of the most famous pictures one of the most famous pictures ever. So that's Neil Armstrong. That person there is supposed to be Buzz Aldrin, in reflected in the visor of Neil Armstrong. You can see the lunar surface. We can see there's this nice shadow here, which suggests that the sun is behind Neil Armstrong. Okay? So, why is he not in the dark? One. Why is there a spotlight? He's in sunlight on the moon. Why is there what appears to be a spotlight? There are what appears to be maybe other people in the visor. There's only two people on the moon. Yeah. And not only that, the camera is on the chest. Yeah. So this is where the camera is.
Yeah.
So Buzz Aldrin has taken this picture. If you zoom into the visor, which I haven't done, you can see Buzz Aldrin there with his camera clicking, click, 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 click.
Yeah, but it'd be lower perspective.
But the angle of the horizon, and people have done, I did have loads of maths on this, but I've taken it out because there's no point. Yeah. And I don't want to have to all explain it all and then sound stupid if I get it wrong. But that horizon's in the wrong place. Yeah. The horizon should be lower.
Because you're taking because it's kind of like I'm a big fan of like crime shows and stuff, and it's like if you sort of imagine a line from the shooter, it's like surely he would. Well, this is again, I guess the relevant data to really know this for sure is like what's the height difference between them and potential height difference in what they're standing on, because you could if you wanted to be super generous, he appears to be in maybe a bit of a dip there. If Buzz was on like a significant mound, there could be some differential, but also with the light source, it's like you would expect the front of him to be a bit more in shadow, a bit more in relief, like the fact that you can see very clear detail on the front of him, whether
what detail can you see on his suit? What can you really see?
You can see the module thing. Like I don't know, you're gonna have to put.
What can you really see on his suit? You
His
see it
cod piece. That's what I see more often than that. He's got a nice cod piece thing going on.
I'm worried about your sexuality now, Rohan.
Yeah,
Right,
no.
but,
Yeah, the American flag. Yeah.
yeah, so the American flag is always clear in every picture. Always.
Well, that I could understand, but it's more just like, yeah, like as you go, depending on where the light source is, it's just, yeah, I don't know. It seems a bit weird that it's so easy to see all of the detail of him from the front. Like normally when you have a subject with a light source behind them, it's like it blinds you a lot more to the relief. But then again, this is the type of thing where you actually need a photography expert that could really explain, because yeah, you'd want someone that actually does this as a job, right? That sets up light sourcing and stuff and would say like, yeah, okay, this looks like it was studio done, because like they would be able to tell you clearly.
Mate, that picture, both of those pictures, and all the pictures that I'm pretty much showing you now have all been taken from. I'll include the link. I've got some links at the bottom of these PowerPoints, but I need to double check them, so I haven't gone back to them. Again, some of these images are from a lesson that I presented when I was teaching at a college. These have been examined by fucking photography experts, lighting experts, people who are involved in the movie industry and that, and all these people that have presented that they're fake are true experts in photography. They cannot explain how any of the photos on the moon are taken, not just the ones I'm showing you, without artificial light source. NASA, on the record, has said they took no lighting. They couldn't because they were conscious of the weight. Yeah. So they took the bare minimum with them.
Because it's easy for me as a layman to say, well, this looks fishy to me. But yeah, it's like if it's the experts who if they say, yeah, this is definitely fishy.
I'll provide links at the bottom.
Who am I to disagree?
I'll provide links at the bottom of the video. But I mean, there's a documentary called Something Funny Happened on the Way to the Moon, and it's like there's a 4-hour detailed examination of all the photographic evidence. All the evidence, but primarily the photographic evidence. They rip it to pieces, yeah? Proper scientists. So, and they can't explain how they got these images, which some of them are so perfect. I mean, this is one of the most famous pictures ever. This is, it's so, some of these pictures are so perfect, they can't even understand how they took them because they had no viewfinder. They weren't looking down. They couldn't even move their heads. They were in these rigid spacesuits.
So they were just guessing with all
They were just clicking, click, 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 click. And then the astronauts' arguments are, we spent years walking around with these cameras practicing on our chests. Fine, but they're on the moon, short time scale, under massive amount of pressure, limited film, okay? Because you can only take so many pictures with a camera, 24 pictures or whatever it would be. So anyway, massive problems with this photograph and this one.
I think the discussion we had previously, even I'm happy to agree that, maybe we went to the moon, but all of these photographs, all of the footage seems so suspect that I don't think any of this. Yeah, see, that's what I would expect more of a real picture from the moon to look like. Just kind of like artifacts, like a bit scuffed. Like.
I mean, the very first pictures from Apollo 11, they were beamed to Australia. Then those the signal was then put on a projector. And then the people who were then going to present it to the rest of the world recorded it off a projector for the first film. So it's almost like they went out of their way to make the quality of the film as poor as possible so that people couldn't question it.
It's like what happens to memes on the internet. They just gradually pixelate into oblivion.
Yeah, exactly. The crosshairs was a problem. So there's plenty of pictures where the crosshairs appear behind objects that are being pictured. And it's not just this one. There's lots of them. There's no way that the crosshairs...
Rookie Photoshop mistake.
Maybe, yeah. Early Photoshop. And again, with the lighting, you can show it here. Shadows are pointing in different directions. Not possible on the moon. There should only be one light source, which is the sun. But there is also starlight and the Earth.
Yeah, to what degree? I was going to say that. To what degree does light reflecting off the? Because if you've got a full moon, you get you can get a surprising amount of light at night. So it's like, to what degree could that interfere? Is it enough to cast a shadow?
I don't know.
That would be a question for the some physicists to answer. There, like, could particularly if you think about it, if there's a storm or something on the Earth's surface, so you've got like a nice blanket of white reflective cloud, could that potentially cast shadow on the moon?
I don't know. I reckon there'll be quite a significant amount of light coming from the Earth, going on the pictures that they took from the moon.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, because it's just like, again, it's good to kind of be like, well, how could this be real? But then again, a lot of these pictures, they're so suspect that even if you're as generous as possible, it's still, you're still left with something that's wrong about it, right?
Yeah.
Even if you go like, okay, the light's right, then why is this that way? Oh, this is right, but then why is the dust doing that? It's just peculiarities.
Some of the shadows present in the footage and the photographs provided, the directions of the shadows are so non-linear that there had to be the only explanation given by the experts that I've listened to, like in that documentary Something Funny Happened on the Way to the Moon, is that there was an artificial light source. There was additional lighting on like it was a stage. And we can't say that there was a starlight as an excuse, because guess what appeared in none of the footage or pictures? Stars.
Yeah, that's a weird one. What's their explanation for that?
Right, so one was to do with exposure of the camera. But, the camera exposure. But the problem personally, and anyone who's if you went to the moon for the first time, what are you going to look at? Hey, we've never really seen a good picture of the space because we've got our atmosphere in a way. We haven't got any Hubble telescopes. We can see things we've never seen before in space, galaxies, nebula, planets, whatever, that we could take a really good picture of Jupiter or Mars from the moon. They didn't even take the correct photography equipment to do that.
Yeah, I would think that if you're going to devote weight to anything, like taking some really cool shots of like Earth and some of the other planets, like as I said, like that would definitely be
100%.
Well, because here's the thing. But the thing that I'm really interested in, because I think that a lot of the photographic stuff, we've really dumpstered on. It is the whole like instruments and things they supposedly brought to the moon and left there to send data. Because this is the thing, it's like what I want to figure out is like, did we get there at all? It's like,
well, we've definitely put robots on the moon.
Yeah,
and we could do that in the 60s and 70s.
Yeah. So we put something on the moon.
Yeah.
That's something that is pretty unquestionable. It's whether or not we had like manned trips or the photography because I'm with all of this stuff, I'm very much in the camp now of like, I don't think this photography is way too sus for me. Like I like I said at the start, I don't doubt a lot of the scientists involved in terms of getting something to the moon, but yeah, there's even questions as to like, did we get people there?
Yeah, I have serious doubts. Yeah, so here's another picture perfect from a camera from the Hasselblad 500 camera, and in it we've got the flag. I'm not even talking about the flag waving. I'm not even going to bring up the flag waving. I'm not going to use that as evidence. No stars, nothing. It's just black. Okay, they got the moon. They got the most expensive vehicle ever made. Right, there's no tracks leading in and out for that vehicle. We've got the lunar module in the background. We've got one of the astronauts stood here. That's a picture. That's got everything. You couldn't have framed it better, could you? And in fact, the photographers who have looked at this have said that's a perfectly framed picture. You've got everything that you want in it, especially the American flag, which is pretty much visible in all shots. Anyway, moving on. So the lunar buggy. Here's a picture of the lunar buggy. It's one of the most expensive cars ever made. Cost millions and millions to develop this buggy. And what's missing? It's in the middle of nowhere. And there's no fucking tracks. How did it get there?
And here's the thing, is like, why did they take a fucking car and not stuff to take proper pictures of spatial objects? Like, what's the fucking car even for?
Just to drive around. It's great optics.
Yeah.
Look at
Like,
us.
that's I think that's an important question. It's like, why the fuck did they bring a car?
And they
Like,
spent millions, billions on that buggy.
because what's the scientific value here? Like, I mean, surely all of the weight. Like, I guess there's instruments on the car.
Yeah, well, it's got a radar.
You know, it's doing some shit. But yeah, I mean,
what's this for?
From a scientific perspective, it's like all the weight that's in that car could be a mobile laboratory that you set up at the landing site, right? And then you do experiments in this completely new atmosphere.
You could set up a permanent telescope on the moon, looking out into space, sending information back to Earth. Permanent. Couldn't you?
Yeah. So I am wondering why they devoted weight to this expensive piece of shit. I mean, if there's some incredibly important purpose for the Lunar rover, like that's a great thing to leave in the comments. It's like if you can justify this thing.
But look, all these.
Yeah, doesn't seem to be any tracks. No
tracks. Yeah, it's underneath all this, and this could be a dodgy photo. I'm looking at some of these crosshairs. And it's making me feel suspicious about this photo. It's been edited.
Well, yeah, because there's another thing. It's just like with a lot of these photos, there's the potential for some of them to be edited. But I think with a lot of these photos that are the verbatim ones from NASA, it's just at the end of the day, for any photo that is edited, there's probably a good 3 or 4 that aren't that have a lot of the same similar discrepancies. But yeah, those crosses do make me wonder that maybe the tracks. But then again, a lot of those weird crosses aren't necessarily in the position where the tracks would be.
Yeah, this is one of the. This is a clue. So don't trust. So don't trust the pictures that I've put up. Go and find your own pictures. Use the links. Have a look at the links.
Yeah, do your own research. The line that everybody hates, but it's so true. I mean, you do have to you have to ask questions about all this stuff.
Do your own research. But there are many pictures of this buggy on the moon, surrounded by footprints, and yet there are no tracks to how that buggy got there.
Well, you'd think it would be easy to find the original picture with the tracks if it is edited, right? So you'd think that you know, and if the Google algorithms do their job, that should be the first thing you see, because you think they should promote the accurate thing. But
go and have a look. Comment at the bottom of the video and tell me anywhere where you think I'm wrong or talking shit. Please do.
Yeah.
So I mean, some of these. What's this instrument for? Why have they got a satellite dish there? What's it for?
Well, I guess the only reason would be to communicate with the landing and the orbital thing. But yeah, I think the whole reason behind this is just like, why do you need to travel a significant distance away from your landing site? I mean, what even window of time do they have for this operation, right? It's like, why are you wasting time buggying around? Like, surely, like as a scientist, all you would do is go there, set up some experiments, and get as much data as humanly possible on everything you can possibly get, and then go.
Yeah.
Like, what's a lot of this for?
Yeah, and they spent increasing as the missions progressed from Apollo 11 to Apollo 17, which was the last one. Is that right? Yeah, that's the last one. They spent more and more time on the surface, and they did more and more unusual things. So I don't know what's going on with that one there. Okay, here's another one. I'm just showing up the evidence. Right. So I'm not going to say anything other than, do you think that those two backgrounds are the same place?
Appear to be, yeah. I mean, I'd find it highly unlikely that you'd get that exact same topography twice on the moon. There is incredibly small deviations in... The only deviations appear to be light, right? Because, yeah, the crater appears ever so slightly different, but that's also because maybe the shadow's being cast differently on it.
I mean,
but when it comes to the actual background...
You're talking this crater here. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And there's a very... because it seems to be... Yeah, it's slightly different. There's enough things lining up in the background that's very suspect, yeah.
Very suspect.
Very, very suspect.
And these two photos have also been examined to death. I believe that these are from 2 separate missions as well. 2 separate missions. And yet, in one, we've got the lunar module there. And in this one, we've got it here, roughly where this astronaut is. Okay. I don't know what he's doing there. It looks like is he sitting down having a picnic or something, or what? I don't know.
Placing some weird little chair-looking device.
Maybe that's the reflector that they're firing the lasers off. Yeah. Hey,
Well,
look.
it's literally just like a little plate, isn't it, that they put in the floor? Supposedly.
Yeah, I don't know 100% of the details, but we can discuss that because that's often an argument given for why the moon landings are real, is because you know, we can fire lasers at the moon and get a signal back. Yeah, fucking, I can fire a laser at anything, I'll get a signal back. Anything, right? Including the moon. Anyway, so it looks like that's the two same sites, yeah? And they never land. They never eat you. And then we saw at the beginning of this little presentation that each of the six successful lunar missions where they reached the lunar surface landed at different sites that were hundreds of miles apart. Yeah, this looks like that can't be the case unless that module there is this one.
Yeah, I'm just thinking if there's any possibility that you could take a picture from those two perspectives and have the background align in that way, and it doesn't seem that feasible to me.
Yeah, I agree. And now we've got,
but it's potential. I mean, again, it's not. This isn't like it's just suspect. I mean, at the end of the day, if you can find some concrete explanation as to how this actually lines up, then regale us with it, please.
The photography experts that I have paid attention to have both said that they've examined it very carefully. Either they made measurements, distances, because the angle changed and the distance in terms of perspective would change and all the rest of it. They're both this camera has been taken from the same place, and again, no stars in the sky. And when the astronauts were asked after landing about, and who was the famous British astronomer, old guy who used to wear a fucking monocle.
Oh God, yeah. Now,
what's his name? Moore.
Yeah, Roger Moore. So Roger Moore.
Not Roger Moore.
Not Roger Moore. No, that was the Bond guy. Yeah, yeah. I'm all confused now. I knew he played the xylophone. Patrick Moore.
Yeah. So Patrick Moore, when they were first, I'm going to include the link of the 1 hour or 1.5 hour where the 3 astronauts were questioned in front of an audience. And you've only got to watch them. You could put it on silent, yeah, and look at them and go, fuck, they're lying. They don't want to be there, even though they've just achieved the greatest achievement in mankind's history. They looked at the ground, they contradicted each other, and it wasn't just that the camera couldn't see the stars and other objects in space, but nor could the astronauts on the surface. Or Michael Collins said he couldn't see it and he never landed on the surface. He was orbiting the moon. Yeah. Bollocks, man. Yeah. And the reason why they couldn't have stars is because people like Patrick Moore would go, wait a sec, that star's out of position. Because astronomers know the sky. Yeah. They couldn't do it. They couldn't.
Well, if you look at every sci-fi sort of show, they always so long as they can see the stars, they can basically tell where they are in the galaxy, right? They can always triangulate their position.
And they couldn't paint stuff that hadn't been seen before because they must have known in the future that we would have Hubble's telescopes that would take actual pictures of the space star.
They'd have to be 100% accurate on that particular perspective of the night sky. Because we know our perspective from Earth, but I'm guessing the perspective would be ever so slightly shifted by a tiny amount from the moon to certain angles, maybe that would these experts would be able to take that apart.
But they would also see things from the moon that we couldn't see from space. They would see things for the first time from the moon, and they wouldn't be able to fake that.
Well,
wait 20 years when we actually get into space and we start looking and say, wait a sec, from the moon, there was a galaxy here. Where's that galaxy gone?
Yeah, that was the amazing thing from my trip to Africa, because there's no light pollution near the equator. Like when there's a super clear night, you can see the Milky Way clear as day. Yeah, you can see all that stuff out there. Like it would be difficult to fake that.
Yeah, so from the equator on Earth, you can see the fucking Milky Way with your bare eyes. Yeah.
And you can see the outlines of the constellations. That's the cool thing. You can kind of see all of those little in-between stars that make the pictures seem more clear.
But you couldn't see it from the moon.
It's definitely, as I said, it's I don't know what explanation they give for, I'm guessing they say there's something about our atmosphere that gives us the proper length. But then, it doesn't seem to make sense for me. You know, it's one of those things where I say, like, obviously I'm just a labor, but all of this makes no sense to me. I'm like, why is this way? All of it just seems so suspect to me. And, you know, it's, as I said, I don't necessarily doubt that we maybe managed to put stuff on the moon, but I am beginning to doubt if people even got there, because it's a lot of, or at least all of the photo evidence seems to be fake to me.
Yeah. So and we're coming to the last two slides, and we've got two videos as well to look at, and then we can just have a sort of general discussion about what Darren's evidence has presented. So photo 1, that's from the Vomit Comet. That's the plane that they send up that does parabolic curves and creates the sensation of zero gravity. Yeah, that's what that picture is from. Categoric, yeah, that's where it's from. This picture was presented as a spacewalk, nothing to do with the moon landing. So I'm just showing you two photos that are definitely faked. Okay, so here is somebody pretending to do a spacewalk. It's the same picture. Yeah, exactly the same picture. Apart from this one's just been put on a black background, no stars. Okay, that one, NASA have gone, yeah, all right, that one's fake. They've admitted that one. This one was from Apollo 17, I believe. They decided, can't take telescopes to look at the sky, we'll bring a golf club. Yeah, some golf balls. And actually, if you go in the Guinness Book of Records, the longest golf drive ever was done on the moon by this guy. I don't know, I can't remember his name, sorry. And he hit a drive, you know, thousands of meters or feet or whatever it was recorded in. And that's in the Guinness. I don't know how they know that. Did he go in the buggy to find his ball afterwards? Good point.
Well, I guess it would be an educated guess based on the trajectory of his hit. Yeah, a lot of that type of stuff just seems like pointless sort of marketing. It's like,
and that's what this picture was. It's got a picture of him swinging the golf club. We've got the other astronaut. We've got the nice radar signal pointed towards Earth. We've got an object here. I don't know what that is. Is that an artifact from the film? I don't know. Is that a spotlight? Don't know. There's the lunar man flag, of course. The flag's in every picture almost. And who took that picture? Who took it?
It looks like the episode of like Red Dwarf when they talk about going to play golf on the little moons. It's like the same thing.
Yeah. Who took the picture?
Yeah, well, yeah, because I'm assuming it's the same module, right? Yeah, so it's who took the picture? Yeah, that is a very good question. I mean, unless I'm guessing this isn't an updated larger module that's capable of holding 3 people, right? It's the same deal.
Only 2 people ever went down to the surface. The third stayed orbit in the moon.
And in these later things, did they bring camera mounting stuff? I mean, they didn't have some sort of timer camera.
Well, maybe because they had enough space for a buggy.
Yeah. If they can. Yeah, they bring all the golf set. Maybe they can bring a camera tripod.
Yeah, maybe that's what it is. Yeah, maybe it's just a camera on a tripod and it's automatic. And they've got. I mean, how would they have taken the picture? Who is he doing it? Is he clicking a button and there's a wire going to the camera? Because it was all wire technology back then to take the picture. He's going right, go swing, wait there. Take it again, but they time that just.
Well, yeah, it's like the old timers, where you'd mess it up.
A third person took that picture, and another giveaway is like the angle. Now, and this shadow, does that look like a shadow of a human being there?
It's definitely like very acute shadow.
Yeah. So this picture has been described as either fake. Or like a composite, of different images. But I believe there's video footage of him doing that. Who took it? Yeah, it's a fake picture. This is categorically a fake picture. This one, it had to be set up either on Earth and done, or it's just a composite of different pictures and they put it all together to create that. Again, no stars in the sky. None of these pictures have stars in the sky. So these two are fake, certainly. Whether they're set up or they've just superimposed one picture they did have onto another, like in the picture on the left here. And then there's the picture of the Earth. So this is my last. And then they went home.
Yeah, because so why can you see the Earth in like absolutely no other celestial body whatsoever? I mean, like that's like why is that?
I don't know. Well, I know because all of the footage, all of the evidence presented for this remarkable achievement, and I'm going to go stop share. All the footage provided by NASA, by the American establishment, the world establishment, whatever, was almost certainly faked. Now, I have two videos, one proving it's faked, proving, as long as you believe WikiLeaks, which I do, and another, just one more little bit of evidence. So,
you see, the vibration of my voice box makes the air vibrate between us. Then when the air vibrates your eardrum, you hear what I'm saying. But maybe you've seen a demonstration of a bell under a glass jar. With normal air inside the jar, you could hear the bell clearly. But when the vacuum pump drew the air out of the jar, there was nothing inside to carry the vibrations of the bell. Nothing until the air was let back into the jar.
Sound won't travel in a vacuum, so there you are outside, and you could be hitting something, no sound at all.
In space, since there's no atmosphere, there's no air, if you bang on something while you're doing your spacewalk, you will not be able to hear that.
no one can hear you in space. It's not even a conversation that we should be having. This is an absolutely certifiable fact that nobody can hear you in space. And actually, when they were banging in, you saw they were banging in the flagpole?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the other guy, so he goes, hey, I can hear this in my spacesuit. And then matey goes, I can't hear nothing. Yeah, he's talking to him through the microphone, yeah? And the argument was, while they're banging down the flagpole, the vibrations within the spacesuit carried the vibrations in his hand, transmitted through the air in his spacesuit to create a sound that he could hear. Yeah, if he could hear it, the other astronaut who was linked to his microphone would also be able to hear it, and he couldn't. And he stated that on the camera. Yeah. So that's, again, another amazing piece of information or evidence suggests that the footage was at least, as a bare minimum, fake. One more video, and then we'll, because I think I've convinced you, Rohan.
Yeah.
I think I've convinced you. Right, final video, and share screen.
WikiLeaks has released more classified documents than the rest of the world's media combined.
Picking up the wound. Returning information to gauge. Light them all up.
That's Buzz.
That's the best. Let's say it's another one to Fred. I think that's awfully good. That one and the one before it was pretty good.
Do we have about 15 seconds?
Oh yeah, you got a lot of time.
Yeah. I claim this land in the name of...
What do you got now? Now move.
And that flag is flowing in the wind. It is.
Yeah, that's definitely waving a bit. Yeah.
Ready? And action.
So that's on the lunar surface.
He needs to go off this mark.
Once more, please.
Otherwise, he,
Let me walk it.
Back in the middle of it.
Here's what we really need is for him to go to his left and then kind of veer back. Is that right?
No lights on the car. No lights. One more right away.
Headlight.
Got that beep.
Yeah, I know. It's fucking annoying, isn't it? I'm going to turn it off a minute. Not as annoying as the noise that the lunar there it is. All the dust away. Up, didn't leave any tracks.
Again, weird questions, but like, wouldn't the rover would have to have some special engine because it would be in like a low atmosphere. It would have to have its own oxygen to facilitate
exactly
the
right,
combustion,
and it has to be. We have to be high enough so that we've got you against blue sky and not.
Yeah, you're right, mate. It's not something I'd have thought about. So it appeared that the lunar rover.
It sounded like a combustion engine, right? You know, it sounded like a sort of lawnmower size engine. So it's like, well, it would have had to have had a canister of air attached to it, and also the engine itself would have had to have been pressurized in such a way to contain. So actually, when you really think about it, building a lunar rover is way more of an engineering marvel than people would give credit for. Well, these days you just use an electric engine.
Yeah, but maybe that's why it was so expensive. Yeah, maybe that's why.
Maybe that was the experiment in and of itself. Maybe that I was wrong the whole time. They were just like, can we get a combustion engine to work on the surface?
You've made a really good point. Yeah, because so another argument about, so we can talk about the radiation. We haven't even talked about the radiation. We don't need to. Radiation really bad on the moon and in space, especially the Van Allen radiation belt surrounding Earth. It will cook everything. Yeah, you wouldn't want to put your pet through it. The Russians tried that. It died. Both the monkey and the dog.
Poor Misha.
Now the moon goes from minus 400 degrees Fahrenheit up to plus 400 degrees Fahrenheit. Yeah, but so there's a massive swing in temperature. How did they keep themselves cool? Because in all those pictures, they're in the sunlight. How did they keep themselves cool? There's no evidence of them radiating away any heat. You don't just, because you're in no atmosphere, there's no conduction. Yeah. So a hot body doesn't just get colder. It does gradually through some other physical processes.
And the suit's not 100% reflective either. So it's like it's going to be absorbing some heat.
Yeah. So how did they cool themselves down? They talk about a liquid. It's right. Yeah, you've got a liquid cooling system. Great. How did you cool that down? Because it's going to get hot if it's taking the heat away from the body.
Yeah, it's got to vent some way, I guess. And in that case, you'd expect to see like sort of big tubes kind of coming off them where the liquid is running through.
Yeah,
where it's being vented to the surface.
You would see some sort of ventilation coming off the spacesuit. They have to get rid of that heat. You have to expel it physically. You can't just radiate that heat away from the suit just by walking around and going, yeah, I'm going to cool down. I'll just get in the shade for a little while. It doesn't work like that. You haven't got an atmosphere. You haven't got all those molecules and particles that exist surrounding you in the air to take that heat away from you. The same with sound. Yeah, you can't make a sound because you're not in an atmosphere. So, I mean, I could go.
Well, even if I want to be generous on that point, it's like, isn't there like a slight atmosphere on the moon? Like, it's not entirely without atmosphere, but even in that case, I have no idea if there's enough there to carry sound. Because wouldn't it would still distort it in some way, surely?
Yeah.
Like even if there was enough atmosphere to carry sound waves.
Yeah. So I mean, if you I was going to say if you fart underwater, but if you make a noise underwater, you can hear it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what you hear it better because it carries.
Because you're in
the sound actually better. Yeah.
That's why if you put your ear to the wall, yeah, you can hear things quite well because a solid material carries sound, heat, electricity, anything that can be conductive.
It's all vibrations, right? Isn't it? Well, at the end of the day, it's all vibrations.
Everything's more tightly packed together. Yeah, so it can carry that vibration signal, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, that movement of particles carries it much better. If you have a really diffuse environment, I mean, our atmosphere is quite diffuse in terms of fluid, which is what it is. Sound's not so good. If you went on the moon, even if it had 1% of the Earth's atmosphere, you wouldn't be able to hear fuck all because you haven't got any particles to carry that movement.
And it would be like the most muffled possible thing. Like yeah, it's even if you want. Again, I'm trying to make these generous arguments. But honestly, when it comes to the footage, like as I said, it's like maybe we actually got to the moon, but I'm pretty confident we didn't film any of it.
Yeah,
I don't think any of the footage really passed. It doesn't really pass the most because yeah, if it looks suspect to me. it's like, that's, if you can't even fool me on this shit, I'm no big expert, and it's just all of it just seems like Photoshop to me by this, like, and it, the WikiLeaks footage, because that's the thing, it's like, I don't necessarily, if you think of the kind of geopolitical sort of game that was being played with the moon landings, I don't blame them for faking it and doing this whole thing as a big sort of showpiece against Russia, like. I
get that. I get it. During the Cold War, they couldn't allow the Russians to be first at yet another achievement. But the Russians have come out and said, yeah, we can't work out how to deal with the radiation.
Yeah.
That's what the Russians said. Yeah, we can work. America's too clever for us. Their spacesuits were amazing. They even asked to borrow the American spacesuits to go into Chernobyl. And the Americans went, yeah, they ain't going to protect you from that, mate.
Yeah, because there's a clear motivation. That's my point. Like with a lot of the sort of more like historical mysteries, it's just like, it's the implications that stem from it. Whereas with this, it's like there's a clear motivation, there's a clear explanation for why they would choose to deceive. So it's like, well, yeah, they wanted to make themselves seem like way superior to the Cold War. Essentially, is the reason they faked the footage.
The reason why they faked the footage, and they needed to convince the American public that they had done what they said they were going to do, because they sucked up a shitload of money. It cost a lot.
This is another thing. It's just like, if you're going to talk about ways that the government cooks up nice plans to soak up shitloads of taxpayer money, because they spent all this money, but what if they didn't spend a shitload of that money to go to space, and they were actually just filling rockets with crap fuel that cost way less than what they were saying, like.
Dodgy buggies.
You look at like the military industrial complex and all these other ways in which taxpayer money is kind of sort of laundered away into various elites institutions. It's like, well, what if it was another kind of scam? And they were just, all of this taxpayer money they were just pumping into certain people's accounts. And
so I think that we should say this is Did We Go to the Moon Part 1? And then a conversation that you might have more say and involvement on. We could do a part 2 sometime in the near future on the reasons why they faked it.
Yeah, why would they fake it?
I think one of those reasons for me is because there's somebody already on the moon and they knew that. I will say that with a straight face. Yeah.
I hope so. I mean, that would make life so much more interesting.
They've got a whole load of other sort of reasons why they may have faked it. And one of them also would be they just couldn't do it. They couldn't do what the Russians couldn't do, and that was get past the radiation that surrounds the Earth.
Yeah.
And still now, I'm like, can we get past the radiation that surrounds the Earth?
So we've definitely dealt with the footage, but we can talk about did we get there all together, like, and what may be on the moon, like maybe why we haven't gone back there, or all the other questions associated with it, because it's. So
we're both in agreement then that at the very least
the footage was faked. I think there's enough. The evidence is good enough for me to say that I don't believe any of that footage.
Yeah, I don't believe any of the footage, any of it. And I fucking looked at it, mate. I have looked.
Because and as you said, it's like the entire time, it's like I've been as like tried to be as positive and to steelman this as much as possible. I haven't just immediately like looked at it or anything like and dismissed stuff. But even if I'm trying to be generous, it's like the errors in a lot of these pictures are so glaringly obvious. It's just enough to make you think, this is all bollocks, really. It's all faked, and
it's all bollocks. So
when it comes to the wider questions of whether we got there at all, I mean, that's definitely one I want to look into a lot more. So we'll have to. So we can hit moons again.
Yeah, we'll keep that conversation for Did We Go to the Moon Part 2, and we'll draw a line under it there, and I'll chalk this up as a victory for the believer. As opposed
you presented a good argument.
Yeah, it's good, and I enjoyed it.
It was good.
And good luck to Steve cleaning all this up. My errors.
The wizard.
Say goodbye. Cheers, Rohan. I enjoyed that conversation. Perfect for a Sunday. And if you like, if you want to subscribe, just do it. It's not going to do you any harm. And comment if you disagree or agree, or you got something to add to the conversation that me and Rohan have just had, and share the video, please. And check us out on Twitter and stuff. All that information is in the link. So bye-bye from me, and
thank you very much.
Get on, Rohan. Speak to you later, mate.
Peace.
Stop recording.
We are the news.